Section 14.3, 2 timelines of 7,000 years on Earth. The Sabbath millennium will be experienced by everyone who is still on the earth when Jesus returns, and by all those who are raptured as well. Why do I say the raptured saints will return with the Messiah? In Revelation 7:8, it says that the raptured saints are wearing white robes. Later, in Revelation 19:7 and 8, we read, "The marriage of the Lamb has come, and his wife has prepared herself, and to her was granted that she should be arrayed in fine linen, clean and white. For the fine linen is the righteousness of the saints." Just 5 verses later, when Jesus returns with his armies, it says, "And the armies in heaven followed him on white horses, clothed in fine linen, white and clean." The bride of the Lamb is the New Jerusalem. There is a long description of the city in Revelation 21. However, nowhere does it describe the city clothed in white linen. I believe that the raptured saints who are in heaven and dwelling in the New Jerusalem, the place that Jesus prepared for them, are clothed in white linen. When Jesus returns for the battle at Armageddon, the saints return with him. In this way, they complete the full 7,000 years allotted for our world. Let me explain what I mean. Before the Sabbath millennium arrives, there are actually 2 6,000-year timelines of which we should be aware: the line of Jesus and the line of Adam. Both timelines have 6,000 years of work, followed by a Sabbath millennium of rest, just as a week has 6 days of work, followed by a Sabbath of rest. The first timeline represents God's perfect plan of good work, followed by a Sabbath. There was work before the curse began at the fall. God created a very good world, and on the 7th day he rested. It says, "And on the 7th day God ended his work which he had made." Adam and Eve also tended the garden that God gave them, and ruled over the animals. Genesis 2:15 says, "And Jehovah God took the man, and put him into the Garden of Eden to work it and keep it." Before the curse of sorrowful toil began at the fall, there was good work. Those who've been removed from Adam's cursed line and are now a part of Jesus' line belong to the first 6,000-year timeline, the line of good works. I do not mean to state that there is any good work one can do to switch to this line, because only Jesus' blood can move you from one line to the other. However, this line is marked by good works. Table 14.1, 6,000 years of good work and then the Sabbath. The line of Jesus. It begins with God's very good creation in 3977 BC. 4,000 years later, Jesus starts his earthly ministry in 25 AD, which ends with his death in 27 AD. 2,000 years later, he will return and rapture the elect. While the elect are in heaven, no earthly time will pass for them, because they will be removed from earth. Then the elect return with the Messiah after the time of wrath has been completed. They reign with him for 1,000 years during the Sabbath millennium. This makes 7,000 years on the earth in total. This is the timeline for all those who have given Jesus their cup of sin and wrath in exchange for his cup of the new covenant. They are no longer part of Adam's line, but have been spiritually restored to the original created line of good work. The purple area is not part of the timeline because when it occurs, the saints are in heaven and no earthly time passes for them. The line of Adam. However, those who have not given their cup of sin to Jesus are still part of Adam's line of cursed work. The second timeline began at the fall, when the curse of sorrowful toil was put in motion. Adam's fallen line must also complete 7,000 years on the earth in total. These 2 timelines, for the most part, run simultaneously, with the events marking the second timeline closely following behind the events marking God's good works timeline. Since the second timeline began just after the first, at the fall rather than at creation, a period of time will remain after the elect are raptured before those who are left behind will finish their 6,000 years of cursed work or toil before the Sabbath millennium begins. This is another reason why we can be sure there will be a rapture. Those of Jesus' line will have completed 6,000 years of good works, and then they must be taken away, while those of Adam's line will remain to complete the 6,000 years of cursed work before the Sabbath millennium can begin. This remaining period will be a time of wrath, the fallen timeline is under the authority of Satan. It may be possible to approximate the gap between the two timelines by looking shortly after each of the events on the first timeline for a pattern of falls in the Bible and in history. The gap between the timelines. To find the original fall and the beginning of the second timeline, we first need to examine the life of Adam and his children. I believe that Adam began to count the years of his life from the day he was created and not the day of the fall. Though he was created immortal, the sun and moon were already in place and were created to mark the passage of time. It is true that before the fall, Adam would not have aged in the sense that we do, but the Bible clearly says, and all the days that Adam lived were 930 years, and he died. If we accept that the total number of years that Adam lived were 930, then it becomes possible to put an outer limit on the time between creation and the fall. The original fall must have happened before Adam and Eve had children, because all of their children were born under the curse. We're not given ages for Cain or Abel in the Bible, but we do know that Adam was 130 when his son Seth was born. Seth was the son that Yahweh gave Eve to replace Abel, who had been murdered by Cain. We must allot enough time after leaving the Garden of Eden for both Cain and Abel to have been born and reach adulthood before Adam was 130 years old. Therefore, it is safe to say that the original fall was probably less than 100 years from the creation of the world. The purple area in Table 3.2 is the time that Adam and Eve were in Eden. No years are included for this time because it occurred before the fall, before the second timeline of cursed work began. Table 14.2, 6,000 years of cursed work and then the Sabbath. Since the rapture completes the first timeline of 6,000 years, the final fall on our second timeline must come shortly after the rapture. Therefore, we must look in the book of Revelation. Just before Jesus returns, there is one final fall recorded in the Bible. 2 full chapters are dedicated to the fall of Babylon. Now let's look at this fallen timeline. First, we have the fall of Adam and Eve, less than 100 years from creation. Second, we have the fall of Jerusalem to the Roman armies in 70 AD. Third, we have the fall of Babylon, which will occur just before the return of Messiah. We know each of these falls followed closely behind the events on the original timeline, though we only have a specific date for one of them. If we plunk in the same 4,000 and 2,000 year spread as we have in the first timeline, this is how it looks. I am offering the space of 45 years as an illustration, not an absolute timing. For example, if Jesus died in 30 or 33 AD, this moves the date of his ministry, and then the fall of Jerusalem would be less than 45 years later. Table 14.3, both 7,000-year timelines. As with the first timelines, the purple shaded area is not part of the timeline because no earthly time passes. Both timelines begin with Adam, either at creation or the fall. Both timelines center on Jerusalem, either at Jesus' ministry or the fall of Jerusalem. And both timelines end with the return of Jesus, either at the rapture or the second coming, just after the fall of Babylon. Both timelines complete a total of 6,000 years of work before the Sabbath millennium. Here's the really exciting part for me. As I was learning all of this, I had one question that kept popping into my mind. Why does the Bible say that we are taken away at the last trumpet when the 7 trumpets are still going to sound after the 6th seal, when the sun and moon turn dark, the stars fall, and the rapture occurs? These timelines gave me my answer. Those who have moved from Adam's cursed line to Jesus' blessed line of good works complete their 6,000-year time on earth and are taken away on the Feast of Trumpets. For the raptured saints, this is the last trumpet. Do you recall that the Feast of Trumpets was also called the First Judgment Day? The first judgment is for the first timeline, for those who are in Jesus and do not stay to face wrath. The second judgment occurs after the 7 trumpets and the 7 cups of wrath are poured out, and is for those who are not ready on the Feast of Trumpets. The second day of judgment is the Day of Atonement, when Jesus returns and fights the battle at Armageddon.